We are in Marin County in Larkspur, California. Originally, we are from New York, the East Coast, but we have been out here since 1989, 1990. And for breakfast, we're having a little cantaloupe right now. There we go.
We're in Larkspur now, but we just came down. We were on Donner Summit for the last 5 months, and we've done that for, I would say, the last 16 or 17 years. We winter up there. We're in the ski industry. Cantaloupe, bottle of water, 6 a.m. yoga, little run on Mount Tam, and here we are. So thanks for having us.
It's only 10:30 a.m. on Monday, and you guys have already had a full day.
We like a yoga class that's nearby, and whenever we can, we do that first thing, the 6 a.m. class. It's a great way to start the day.
And maybe couples who yoga together, stay together.
Yeah.
Stay together. Exactly.
It's a good contrast. At 5 p.m. today, we're going and we're coaching at San Quentin, which we could talk about later, but we have that this evening. So it's a good full day.
Wonderful. Actually, I thought we could begin by just talking about that right now, because I saw the little teaser of the documentary that you pointed me to about the running program at San Quentin that I believe you guys help coach. I thought we could just start with that. The documentary is wonderful. I cannot wait to see the entire movie. Can you tell us what is this running program at San Quentin Prison? What is your role there?
Sure. It's a running program that started probably, how many years ago was it?
It's about 18
years ago. And it was started, a volunteer on the inside reached out to the community through the local running club, the Tamalpas, looking for somebody interested in helping to start a running club on the inside for the residents inside who had expressed interest in a running club. And it was posted on the Tamalpa social media board, and the president of the club had put out the communication on it. No one expressed any interest in going in, so he decided to do it. And that was Frank Rona. And so he went in not really knowing what it was going to be like or what to expect. He took over and led this program for 18 years, and it grew. It started out with just a handful of men and a few coaches over the first couple of years. I started in about 2009, a few years after. I was there for the first marathon. And this year we just had our 13th annual marathon, 14th annual marathon. So the program basically is, San Quentin has a number of really good volunteer programs on the inside. This one, we go in and every other Monday we meet in the yard and do a workout. And once a month on Fridays, we have a race. It starts out with a benchmark mile in January and then builds up in distance to a 3 mile, 5 mile, 10 mile, and then a 2 and a 3 hour run, a half marathon in there. And it builds up to a marathon in the fall. We have now about 150 men on the roster now. So it's really grown in size. And we regularly have 30 men at practices, and we have about 15 volunteers helping us with the coaching. So it's been a tremendous success with, we have people who've been doing it for many years. And, you can talk about the film.
Yeah, the film, the documentary is a movie. It's 26.2 to life. And ESPN has it on their ESPN Plus. And if you have Hula Plus, you can watch it. It really captures the spirit of the team. We as coaches, we approach the men and the club very much from a running perspective. Like tonight we're going to do probably a ladder up to a mile. We'll do an 800 to 1200 a mile and then back down. But what we have found, we've coached high school teams and we've coached adult teams and we've coached adult individuals. And like if you're coaching a team properly, a community just builds from working together. And athletes have really good relationship with coaches, and then athletes have really good relationships with other athletes working, and you build this community organically from just having the running thing as, the main activity. And so we took what we've learned at other teams and have applied it to the team in San Quentin. And these guys happen to be incarcerated, but we really respect their athletic abilities. We did results this morning. We did an 8-mile race a couple weeks ago, and we're going in tonight, and we'll bring certificates of completion and results, and we keep course records, and it's really a cool thing to be involved in. And Frank started it, but he stepped aside. So Diana, myself, and then another individual, Jim Maloney, we're kind of the head coaches now, and it's been great. I mean, we've done it for a long time, and the movie changed the visibility of it, but it's still same activity, going in Monday night with the men, doing a workout and building that community.
And in terms of what we get back from it, this community is such a forgotten and overlooked community of people. And they are so incredibly appreciative to have people from the outside, like the coaches, us, and also the other volunteers who go in. And these connections and the running program and having a goal and being able to talk about a goal, just like for people on the outside, that's important. Well, I would say for people on the inside, who often don't have any contact with anyone, including some who don't even have family that they're in contact with, it means so much to have the running goals and the connections with the coaches and other volunteers. And they show it, that appreciation. So it's really, we get so much out of it because we can see how impactful it is to them.
Thanks for sharing that. So let me understand this. So this is San Quentin Prison. I think it is maybe the oldest prison in California.
Mhm.
And 18 years ago or so, they started this running program. And now you guys are helping out as the head coaches. So I'm going to ask a couple of really basic questions.
Okay.
So how does an inmate get either selected or self-select into this running program? So can any inmate go and join this running program? Are you disallowing maybe certain kind of inmates who maybe are on death row and could be hostile? And then once some people come and express interest in joining, are you putting them through some kind of basic qualification to see if they are fit enough to actually run in this San Quentin running team? Like, yeah, walk me through, like, how does this thing transpire?
Well, that's a really good question. And at San Quentin, the way it works is that only certain parts of the population have yard privileges. So there was the death row, which now is being closed down, and those people are being transferred to other places. But there are different levels within San Quentin where certain populations do not have yard privileges. So they would not be eligible to be members in the club. But other than that, there's no restriction. And an important part of the club actually is our inside contact, because it's really a club that's led by the men on the inside. So the incarcerated men have a president of the club. They have bylaws. They really run the club, and we facilitate it by being the coaches who come in and help them. So our president right now, who's been the president for quite a while, is Tommy Wickard. He's in the film. He's one of the men featured. So he does a lot in terms of outreach and finding people who are interested, or if someone's interested, they get referred to Tommy or one of the other current members, and they come to the workout, sign up. We have a roster. We maintain that roster. But basically, anyone who is out on the yard and can come out for the workouts is eligible to be in the club. and they have earned those yard privileges. So a lot of the population at San Quentin are people who, and this was the population does change over time. There are different types of people who end up at San Quentin. Right now, uh, or in the early years, I would say most of the population that were club members were people with very long sentences, like life sentences, but who also had been there for a long time. And San Quentin has a lot of programs. So it's people who have done a lot of programming and maybe have been incarcerated for 10, 15, 20 plus years. And the age profile early on was more people in their 50s and 60s. So sort of an older population. That's changing now. We definitely have more younger men, but I would say that still a lot of people with the longer sentences, but they're ones who have earned the privilege of being at a place like San Quentin and having yard privileges at San. So,
Yeah.
do you want
I
to?
mean, and then the other thing is we deliver certain goods. We give a hat out, and there have been years when we give shoes out. And
Mm,
that creates a lot of buzz within the prison. And it's
mm,
super interesting. There are certain athletes that are very interested in being in the club just for that stuff. But what we have found by having a good program and having fun and developing, we were in two or last Monday, I think we had 8 coaches, and they're really good. They're good people. The guys get into it. And you're doing intervals together and you're laughing and you're warming up and you're warming down. And then we're doing a stretch and like that community thing I talked about. So we have certain members that will absolutely never, we run around a quarter-mile track. So it's 105 laps to finish the marathon. There are certain guys that will not and should not ever finish or try to finish the marathon. But what we do as coaches, we emphasize participation and we emphasize improvement based on where you've
mm,
started. So if you're that 45-minute 5K runner and you want to join the club and you get down to 38 minutes over a couple of years, that's a victory for the club. And it's the same thing we used to emphasize when we were coaching high school. It's improvement relative from where you start. So we got all different shapes and sizes. It's awesome. And we had a guy run 3:05 last November. He broke the course record. I mean, that's moving. And then we have guys that are running 6 or 7 hour marathons. And we love them all. It's great. And it's very much about athletics. We don't want to know what you're doing, why you ended up in there, how you ended up there. There are times when it comes up when we get to know people. But if somebody shows up in the yard to train and they have a true interest in improving themselves and learning the discipline of running a marathon and doing tempo runs and doing intervals and watching your diet and hydrating and rest and recovery, they take those disciplines and they apply it to other things. It may be their AA, it may be their NA, it may be their restorative justice, it may be different programs working on their past, working on their future, looking at their families, considering their victims. There's all sorts of things these guys are working on. So it's a fascinating population to be amongst. And we're really lucky to be involved in the program because I will tell you, these guys are working hard on themselves. So it's super interesting.
Yeah, we feel it is a privilege to be able to work with them. And in terms of the population, when I first went in, I didn't know what to expect, but it is really, it might seem like, wow, that is it scary? Or, do you feel threatened? All of those things. And immediately going in, I learned that that's not what the environment is at all, that these are people who are really welcoming, who know that it is a privilege to have volunteers come in and that you lose that if anything it goes wrong or if there's anything done or said that's not appropriate or anything else. So right from the beginning, it was a feeling of being really welcomed and that it's special for them to be there, and we've learned that it's really special for us to also be able to go in and work with them.
And I think we may have got the timing wrong. Diana's in her 17th year going inside, and I'm in my 9th. So it's been a long-term thing.
Wow, that's a generation. Fascinating is a good word. I am very fascinated with this, as I'm sure people listening to this podcast will be. And I feel I could just talk about the work you're doing there all day. But maybe one or two key things I want to understand. One is, with your experience coaching over the last 2 decades at San Quentin, any key insights that you have gained about the transformative power of running? You could even illustrate with maybe a couple of personal stories of people.
There are almost too many stories to think of, and I can think of individuals, but like the arc, typically they show up, athletes show up, and they're totally clueless as to what's going on. And we teach them the vocabulary, and we teach them what an interval is and what a race is and what the difference between a 5K and a 10 miler and a half marathon and a marathon and the output effort. And when you run the marathon, it changes you. And when you run it with a group and there is this outward desire for people to succeed from others, it does change the person you are. And I mean, we have seen so many guys transform their lives from a world of trauma and hurt and a lot of negative stuff. And just step by step, like each workout, they get more connected with us. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes people show up for 3 workouts and we never see them again. But other guys, they start to kind of get into it, and then they're asking questions. And for many of them, just having somebody that cares about something in their lives genuinely makes a difference for who they are. And then the thing that we're really looking for them to do, and it happens organically, we never have to mention it. We want them to apply all of that stuff to the other parts of their lives. I already mentioned it, but it does happen, and it's really, it's abstract, but you can see it in people and you can see their changes. And we've gotten over 53 guys have gotten out in the club over the 18 years. And we are very much in touch with many of them on the outside. And some of them are software developers at companies and just crushing it. And then other guys have trouble. They have trouble when they have to apply for a job because they got to check a box. And there's a wide variety, but they are trying. And in our population, many of them were lifers. And what we have found is if you are given a chance, you do your 20, 25, 30 years, and then you get your chance to get out and you're paroled, you don't mess up. I mean, we have had 0 guys go back.
Wow.
And that's, I think it's a lot because they're long-time residents. And so when they're given the chance, they go to these facilities that the CDRC sets up and they follow the rules. I mean, these guys are not messing around. Like, I was told I was going to be in life. The first 10 years Diana's coached, maybe 1 or 2 guys got out. Like, parole was not a thing. We didn't even think it was going to ever happen for a lot of these athletes. So it's super interesting.
Yeah, and the connections that you make inside, especially over the years, because running is just that continuous. Some of the programs at San Quentin are time focused. So you graduate and then you move on. But running is just like running for all of us. It's just, you meet friends and you stay together over the years. So you really form those special connections through running. Just like you do on the outside, you do that on the inside. And every day, my day starts, Tim days start, and I think that they're with a text from one of the guys who was a club member on the inside and is now on the outside. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day, love you both. Hope you have a great day. Another one I'll read that I got yesterday from another person who I knew for those 17 years. He was in the club when I joined. And he said he sent a picture of him on an electric bike with his granddaughter. He said, "This is me where I'm moving to, giving my granddaughter a ride on my electric bike. Have the best time out there." And then he said, "Look at the hat and shoes. Do you recognize them? The ones you guys got me. Thanks for being so kind to me. You two are the best friends I had in prison." You make those connections, and that means a lot. Like coming from him, I know that's from his heart, and I feel the same way with him. And at the same time, I'm really happy to see him launch. Like he's going to move to Southern California, and he's moving in with his daughter and his granddaughter, and he's going to be happy and he's going to be good. But that connection that we had with him in prison meant a lot, and it gives these guys who are on the inside hope. Connection. He didn't have any connection with that daughter or anybody, but it was a bridge. And then when he got out, and even like inside early on, some of the guys would come up to me and say, "You coming inside means so much because someday some of us are going to get out." And knowing how to talk to people and connect with people and knowing that there are people who are kind on the outside and are there will make us better and better ready to be on the outside and be good people that we want to be.
So badass. Thank you for sharing those personal stories. I mean, geez, I can only imagine how deeply you have touched and the program has touched and transformed these people's lives. They feel a sense of connection and of gratitude to what Run and broadly this thing has given them. Coming back to you guys, this transformation that this program has provided the prison and the inmates, I'm sensing it has also transformed you guys. You have given your sweat equity over the last couple of decades. I want to ask a couple of things and then take it back to this broad theme of you guys as a running couple. How has this changed, evolved your relationship to both the sport of running and to each other?
Well, I think we're huge advocates of getting involved. When we first started getting involved in the sport of running, and we've race directed, and we've coached high school, and we've coached individuals, and I've coached Diana's running team for a couple of years, the Impalas. But I mean, the general theme for us, like we're starting to really slow down a little bit. And we can talk about the process and goal setting and all that stuff. But as your running changes, the idea of helping others experience the sport, whether it's high school, whether it's adults, or whether it's incarcerated guys, it's just really fun and it's rewarding. And what you end up with really good friendships and relationships that have texture, that are built around a goal and working and laughing and having fun and keeping things in perspective and like realizing, oh, it is just running, but it's really important at certain times in your life. The coaching theme in general has just made us happier because we have so many good relationships with people, including Larry, who sent that text. I don't know what else.
Yeah, and I think you said it when you used the word the transformative power of running. Right now, we're working on a guidebook, and this grew out of the 26.2 to Life film. And it's how to start a running program in prison, because people have seen the film and have reached out about being able to start a program like this in other places. And the subtitle is The Transformative Power of Running in Prison. And it really is. I think that's what it's both building those relationships and seeing how running can change lives. And, and as we do age and maybe our own running goals and personal goals are we're not as focused on that anymore. I think just being able to share that passion for running and to be able to bring that to other people and then just see what it does to them. And, the San Quentin residents are the ones that where you really see it's a needy population, like I said, they are overlooked and forgotten. And to be able to bring that to a place like that is really so powerful and meaningful.
Very powerful indeed. And it's obvious how you have given so much to the running community through the work you've done with San Quentin and outside as well. And I'm sensing, yes, it has been a change agent for your lives as well. Going back to you, I would actually like to now understand a little bit more about your running careers. Could you please both share about what your journey has been into running and also how you met?
I started running in my 20s. So after college, when I was in
Right.
law school, I was living in New York City. I was near Central Park, the reservoir, and basically saw people running around the reservoir and just started participating. My father also had been a runner early on before anyone ran. So I had that background and experience with it, but I never ran in school, in college, or in high school, really. I was running, that was in New York City, and I joined, after several years, joined Central Park Track Club uh, through a friend of mine. I was working at a law firm. I just graduated from law school, was working at a law firm, and a friend there, I did the Manny Hanny corporate challenges in the summer and was on that team. And he encouraged me to join Central Park Track Club, a running club in New York. And it was through that club that Tim and I met. A friend of his was, I think, the president of the club at the time, John Kenny. And we met at a race out on Shelter Island where Tim was living. So that's how I got started and how we met.
Yeah, and just for the record, that's like the most modest version of Diana's running career. Now you sprinkle in a couple, three Olympic trials and president of West States.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll be able to tease out some of the. Yeah.
We'll get into that stuff. I'm not a middle of the packer, but I got out of college, Hobart College in 83, and I was kind of living a disgusting lifestyle health-wise. And so I started running, just try to get a little bit healthier. And I quit smoking. I actually quit drinking a long time ago. And then I met a guy, his name was Cliff Clark, and Cliff had run in the 1972 Olympic trials in the steeplechase. And he was like, he kind of competed against Prefontaine, so that era. And Cliff was this local coach. So he had a group, Team Shelter Island. He taught us a lot. We still use a lot of his coaching principles today. But I got into it and we ran roads and track and shorter distances for years. And then in 89, I ran my first 50K, the Tamalpa Headlands 50K. And, it led to us running Western States and getting involved in the trail community. So that's in a nutshell.
Diana, you have some, very impressive accomplishments as a runner and as somebody who's performed consistently over so many decades. But from your point of view, what are your moments, your peak moments that you are the most proud of?
Let's see. Well, I'll first start when I moved to San Francisco. I joined the Impala racing team, and that was really crucial in my running development from then and a lot of the success I had. I moved here, I was probably about 30 years old, and the coach at the time was Mike Pinelli, and I'll give a lot of credit to him for guiding me through those next years, which were so critical and some of that success that I then had. And then Tim always also helped as in terms of coaching. And it really helped that we did it as a partnership, the running it made it really easy to fit in. It was never an issue. We both supported each other and made it so that it could be a priority, but it was never, a conflict or a problem. I guess in terms of my proudest moments, it would be on the Impalas, getting into the marathons. I had some success with marathons and really enjoyed that. The Olympic trials were some proud moments, and traveling with the team, and Mike and Tim and my family went from New York. And so those were some really great moments. And then after that, I really enjoyed trail running and getting into first the Dipsy and having, I think the proudest thing I have with the Dipsy is just that I think I ran every Dipsy. I missed 1 year. So that just was great longevity, and I'm proud of that.
For 23 years.
Yeah, for 23 years. So I started it in 2020. And so this year will be my 23rd year. I missed 1 year in
2001.
there.
Not 2020.
What's that?
2020 would be 4 years.
Oh, 2000 was my first
yeah,
Dipsy.
exactly.
And then, so this will be my 23rd. And also then the transition to ultra running. And I think the most enjoyable and fun running I've had is as an ultra runner. I really loved that transition, loved that new community of people, and just the mentality around ultra running, which is so focused on having fun and going out and getting out on trails and spending a lot of time. And then getting involved in Western States, and now I'm on the board. I'm president of Western States, and that has also been a really gratifying and fun part of my running career, I would say.
23 years doing the Dipsy and not taking a break. Obviously, you have some secrets to this consistency and performance that many of us can learn from. And Tim, you are no slouch from what I get. I think you're well known for the coaching work you do, but you have also been a high performance runner. I think both of you ran marathons really, really fast. What are some moments that you are proud of yourself as a runner? And also, it's funny, you are also modest. You talk about your prior lifestyle, pre-running, and now and quitting smoking, and then getting into running first marathon. So, yeah, curious, what are some of your moments that you think back with some pride and fondness?
It's interesting because I've had good races that have been, they're like regionally decent, 19 hours at Western States, 2:35 marathon PR. Diana's is 2:37. Those are good, but that's not going to do anything for you. Like I'm proud of them. They're fine. I'll take them. But the thing that stuck with me is like when I had a good race, the process. And like for 2002, the build up for Western States with my two buddies, Mark Rickman and Tommy Lyons, those were the highlights easily for that trail running era of my life. It was just, we had so much fun training together. And then the race turned out, the race was totally fun. I ran 20:09 or whatever it was. It was top 20 at Western States, which is kind of what I am. The same could be said true for the road cycles with Diana. We'd go to Kezar or we'd go to SF State early on and do a tempo run early on a Saturday morning with the fog rolling in. And it was just like, it was fun. So the races are important to create the goal for the process. But it was really more the training stuff that I enjoyed, and like just having good days training and then good days racing based on my talent, my age, my work schedule. We have two amazing kids, Katie Fitzpatrick, who's 31, and Chris is 29. And we were busy. So we did what we could do running wise, but I don't know, like I enjoyed the training almost more than I enjoy the racing. And I had decent results, but
You know,
Yeah, I agree with all. And oh, go ahead.
only thing I was going to say is being able to enjoy the process is, I think, a consistent theme that I'm finding as I speak with Uber athletes such as yourself. I think I don't run ultra marathons, probably never will. But I find that other things I do and other things people like you guys do, I don't think you can run for 20 plus hours if you don't enjoy the process of running itself, if you don't enjoy the process of training. I'm curious, is there some way you have trained yourself over the years? You have found some wellspring you have tapped into that has allowed you to get so much fulfillment out of this training, which for some others, many others, could be quite grueling and taxing and difficult. 6 a.m. wake ups, or maybe pre dawn wake ups on a daily basis, getting yourself out to the track, putting in the miles. What is it that you found has helped you continue push yourself and delight in the training?
um it's a really good question. Um there's a couple of things that I think keep us going. And it's not for everyone, but we do like to have a goal. And sometimes the goal like is just starting it again. Like we just came out of 400 inches of snow and we barely run a step during the winter. So like the goal for the next 2 weeks is just to get back into running and see how things feel. That being said, the other thing is to take breaks from it. So if you're just constantly going and you have race goals that are always on your calendar year after year after year after year and well, they're all linear, you can burn out. So we tend to take really long breaks where we're just like, we're not runners during the winter, and that's fine. Um, but once we get back into it, it helps for us to have structure. And the structure includes a couple of different types of running: long runs, intervals, tempo runs, and also rest. You've got to honor the rest within your little micro programs, your 2 week little training binges. You got to do it every other day or every third day, something hard. So taking breaks, enjoying the process, having a structure, and then the goal thing, like a race is really helpful. Like I'm going to run 100K in August and I've already counted out my weeks. I've got 14 weeks until that date. I'm going to do the Dipsy in June, which I'll just do my best. I'll train through it. Then I'm going to do a series of long runs and hopefully I'll get there. But having a plan, not being totally random about it. And some people can be random about it and get awesome results. We tend to like a little bit of structure, a goal, and a schedule.
And I think another piece of it for me is also just having realistic expectations and not, because I think some people lose the fun when they can't achieve goals and maybe set goals that are no longer realistic. And I mean, getting back to the aging part, and actually even back to the question about like some of your best moments. Maybe one of my best moments was finishing Western States the last time I did it, which was when I turned 60. And I did break 24 hours. That was part of it. So and I set the age group record. But going into it, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know if I'd be able to do that, so I didn't have like a definite expectation and that I would be disappointed if I didn't do it. Instead, I went into it not really knowing. I hadn't run an ultra in 4 years. I didn't know what the difference would be between 56 and 60. Those are 4 important years in terms of aging. And rather than like fighting to make that goal and get myself being focused on the end result. It was more, again, about going back to what Tim said, it was more the process. And then that day itself was one of the best days that I remember experiencing, and which made the finish so rewarding and so memorable. My kids were out there. Katie paced me for one section. Chris paced me for another. Tim was recovering from a surgery, so he was out. He met me at Michigan Bluff, got me through a really low point, and then was out at every spot along the way, knowing exactly, what I needed to do, keeping me focused. And then Dave Mackey also paced me for a section. And finishing was so fun and rewarding because of having that close team. Not at one point during the race, having let go of the breaking 24-hour as a goal, and then unexpectedly getting it at the very end. So, but I think part of that goes back to having realistic goals so that you're not setting yourself up for disappointment or fighting to get a result. That results aren't always achievable. So if you're more focused on the result than the process, it can be more disappointing. Like getting up every day and doing yoga and all of that. Part of me, I feel lucky that I can still run and do these things and just try to enjoy that part of it as well.
What I am sensing, you guys, so thank you so much, is that going back to enjoying the process, I'm sensing that you are putting in careful thought and planning into your long-term goals. You have this race coming up in August, which is many months from now, but you already have this whole plan laid out. And I'm sensing that you are able to derive satisfaction in being able to check off things in preparation for that long-term goal. So being able to do that on a daily basis, weekly basis, gives you that milestone that you are working towards. So as you do that, I think it probably gives you the knowledge that, yes, we did this. This is what was set out for the day, for the week, for the month. And that allows you to progress through all the difficult actual miles on the track and on the trails. And then, Diana, you spoke about going into the Western States race for your 60th. And you're, of course, just as Tim said, so modest and humble about it. And I think actually reading somewhere that I don't remember the exact thing you said, but you just seemed very nonchalant about your expectations. But then you ended up breaking the age record and doing it in sub 24 hours. So I'm trying to understand this. How are you able to first keep such low expectations for yourself, but then also go, set this incredible record and do so phenomenally well?
Well, I think one thing that Tim and I both have in common, and that a lot of ultra runners or marathon runners do, is it is fun to be able to, I like to test myself and to push myself and to see how far I can go. So that is part of like kind of a weird word to use, but part of the enjoyment and fun is to, on game day, just be ready to hurt and to be ready to push myself. And part of doing that is remembering all of that work that went into it and all of the support and people and everything else. And now this is race day and you don't want to treat it lightly. So, and also knowing like the reward that will be at the very finish of it, how you'll feel that you really gave it your all. So I think for both of us, being able to feel that we gave it our all is a part of the training, and the process is getting ready for race day and being ready mentally and physically to hurt and to go into, I mean, as everyone like Courtney to Walter, the pain cave, and do that. But no, you come out on the other end feeling really satisfied.
And then I also remember reading that perhaps you are now going to go back into running quote unquote shorter races. So you started your beginnings into racing as a marathoner, you went into doing ultras for super long. Is it correct that you are now training again for running shorter road racing again?
I'm going to do the Dipsy, which is shorter. That's 7.4 miles or 2 miles. And then I'm going to do a marathon in the fall. I'm going to do California International Marathon in December. And I've done that the last 2 years. So I want to do it again this year because it'll be my 10th. And that was different because that was shorter to do that. I'd really done mostly ultras up until 3 years ago when I did CIM again that year. And maybe to build up to the marathon, I'll do a few half marathons or a 10K or something. But I won't necessarily focus on shorter races right now.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've found is if you do all long, slow running, you become a long, slow runner. So we've always built a little bit of speed, a little bit of road. Occasional, like last year, we ran a 5,000 meter on the track at just like a low key all comers race. We're big proponents of mixing it up and pushing your anaerobic threshold lower and lower and lower. It helps your ultra running. The tricky thing for the age grouping, as you become an age grouper, is realistically adjusting your goals. And we're really big. We coach a lot of stuff to the idea of negative splitting. And so like I'll do a 10-week cycle to get ready for Cal. And I want every single one of my runs, workout, tempo runs, and long runs, I want to do the second half slightly faster than the first half. And it's just a discipline. And that makes you focus more on the process and not the fact that you're probably going to run Cal 40 minutes slower than your PR. I mean, that's a lot, it's like, but that's the reality. As you age, you start looking at your old times. You have to just throw them out the window but if you run every workout negative split and you do your best, and then you go to the race and you run your best time.
So at the race last year, and this is what you start focusing on when like Tim said, your times are slower than they've been before. But Tim's race last year at CIM, the marathon, was his first half was 1 second different from his second half. So he ran, I mean,
I ran
that's pretty much
Wow.
for us, that's a perfect race. That's what you want. That's what we're trying to do. And he did that last
So
year.
you're trying to run even splits, and that becomes the formula. So, and you know what? There were like a bunch of 60-year-olds in front of me. It's fine. But I had this thing where like, I'd really want to try to run an even race. And
He did.
I did. And my time was fine. It's 3:18 or whatever it was. Not going to, it's like I'm a regional decent runner. That's who I am. But I had this little micro goal in mind to keep me, and I trained to that. Intervals, tempo runs, everything was like, okay, how even can I run this 5-mile tempo run today or a negative split instead of going out too fast and then slowing down?
Talk about a well laid out plan being executed to perfection. That's incredible. Like, so your splits for that marathon were like 1 second apart.
Yeah, actually, it was a little bit more than that, but it
No.
was like 5
Whatever.
seconds
They
or
were like
something, but
pretty.
whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
That's incredible. Tim, you coach Diana and the Impalas team, I believe. Are you coaching
I
yourself
did
also?
at one point years ago, I coached the Impalas when Mike Finelli was the head coach. I was kind of the assistant coach. This is a long time ago. Our kids were very young. In fact, we were living in the city.
Okay.
Um,
Sure, but
But Tim has also a lot of individuals since then.
got it. What I was coming to was, again, being able to stay competitive and consistent. with Diana and yourself, are there any other insights to training or coaching principles that have allowed you keep excelling? Are there things that you're doing which you can share, which can help the rest of us?
I mean, my biggest advice is to keep it fun. And, you know, the, I think the Cal International, like, split thing is a perfect example of just like do something, make it fun. We are a little bit more quantifiable. Some people will just run a ton and do a race and have a great result. For a road race, we tend to get a little bit more quantifiable. We'll run a half marathon. And so we'll have a definitive plan going into the race for a pace and a goal. But that's the fun part to us. That's the fun. Like, okay, I'm 62 years old. I'm here. I'm ski patrolling full time. I'm not running as much year round. What's the alchemy? What can I run? What can I do given this next 10 weeks? And that's fun to me. And do it with people that laugh and that have a good time, or that you can cry with when they're hurting, and be a human with other people all the time. It's such a judgmental world we live in right now. And, like, we try to bring that to every workout and every run. And even this morning, just the two of us, it was so beautiful on Mount Tam this morning. It's like, man, we're up here and it's not pretty. We're like two age groupers jogging along. That's fine. It is what it is. But, there's like the one thing about San Quentin, and I don't want to get preachy about it, but like in a world where there are the haves and the have-nots, if you go into San Quentin for 10 years or 16 years like Diana has, you really see what's happening in the world. It's one lens, but we are super, super lucky to have our lives. And so we try to bring a little bit of joy and fun and excitement to every run. And it's not every day, but I don't know.
Yeah, and we have we end up generally with a community of runners too.
Yeah, we run with groups.
We are with training for a marathon in December. There will be a group of us who will be doing that. And it's fun to do our long runs together. And that can usually encompass a wide range of paces, even for, the marathon. We have a Tuesday morning workout that we go to every week, and we've been doing that for years. It's an offshoot of the Impala workout that I used to do when we lived in the city 30 years ago. And now there's a group of us that meet here in Marin at 6 on Tuesday mornings, 6 a.m. And then that group also will meet other mornings in the week, and we'll do long runs on the weekends. So that part makes it fun as well. And then sharing, both like goals and plans and everything else, but also just spending time together.
Makes so much sense, all of it. It's these 3 or 4 different things. One is having fun and realistic goals. Second, putting together structure that makes sense. And thirdly, maybe in some ways, most importantly, having the right community, starting with each other, starting with your cohort of runners that you have likely running, training, meeting for decades. And then finally, you have also created this running family. And I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes on that. Your kids are runners as well. I'm not sure if running is as important a part of their lives as it has been for both of you. Curious, was it accidental that both your kids would start enjoying ultra running or just running as much? you mentioned how I think Chris was pacing you in one of your races, and that just paints this beautiful visual of, of doing something that you love and then having your son helping you pace through it. Not many families get to experience that kind of bonding. So, yeah, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about how did you create this running family?
Yeah. Well, I think when the kids were young, because our life was so defined and our friendships and our schedules and everything else around running, we were actually really careful to not push it on them. So, Katie, our daughter, dabbled a little bit in running in high school, but they were both basically, they got into ski racing because of our cab and our time up in the mountains. So we followed that lead and they both ended up skiing it through high school into college and everything else. And then, but skiing has a lot of the same, things built into it. There's a lot of work around it. There's a lot of tuning and equipment and discipline and getting up early and sacrificing other things to make sure you train and you show up and and you create a community. So they created that in the ski racing world in their younger years. And then as they became more adults, Katie now belongs to the Impala racing team, which is my running team. It's an all women's team based in San Francisco. And that's really cool to see her because now her generation of runners it's exactly the age Tim and I were when we moved to San Francisco and I joined the Impalas, which was the day after we moved here. And that became our world and our whole community and everything else. Chris, meanwhile, he runs a little, not with a team. He works out. I mean, I would say running is not his main sport, but he surprised us 2 years ago when he and his girlfriend, now fiance, decided they were going to switch jobs. They were living in Seattle. They were both ready to quit their jobs, switch. He had been at Amazon for like 5 years, and she was ready. She's a speech therapist and was ready to switch. They decided to hike the PCT. So we always joked that, like, we thought we were the endurance athlete in our family. And meanwhile, Chris at age 28 ended up doing the biggest endurance event of any of us and hiked the entire PCT from the Mexico border to Canada. So they've both embraced that type of lifestyle. Katie in the form of running in the Impalas, Chris just in his life, and he continues that. But it wasn't something that we were actually very careful to not push running on them in those early sort of more formative years. And having a family and having kids, I would say for us has also it's made all those priorities in life, really, and perspective on running and the importance of outcome. I think it's been really healthy and helpful for us because we've always made that the priority. And we are so proud of our kids. And that's number one for us is our family and our kids and their happiness and what they're doing. And running has always been important and we fit it in. But that's always number one.
Yeah, I mean, and the kids, you really see over time, you have these big accomplishments as an individual with running, but over time, like we realize what's really important. And like, Dinah won the Dipsy one year and we were sitting there having dinner and it's kind of it's not like meant to be like a gender story. But Katie said to Diana, said, Mom, you know what? Tomorrow you're going to be doing dishes and the laundry. Meaning you have these big accomplishments that seem like the pinnacle, like I worked so hard for this, but then the next day you got to start grinding on with the rest of your life.
It was a great perspective.
And it was like a wonderful, and she was young at the time. It was, but it was like, okay, so you won the Dipsy. That's a big deal. But the next day, everybody's got to you got to go to work or you got to do your family or you just got to do whatever you got to do. And it's probably like climbing. the day after you do El Cap. That is such a mood altering idea, but it's the beginning of the rest of your life. So you got to I always went to work the Monday after Western States.
Yeah.
Even though I was hurting, and Dinah did the same thing, it was I want to just put that behind me. I could talk about it and relive it, but I want to just start doing the dishes, doing the laundry, going to work, start the routine again.
And running played a really prominent place in our kids' lives growing up, just observing it, because we were dragging them up to, across to the
Michigan Bluff.
Dipsy, and they're throwing up in the back of the car because they're car sick at 5 a.m. to get to the start, or going to aid stations and, and watching us at Western States. And I remember my son, Chris, but that's all they knew. So they thought it was, somewhat normal. But I remember Chris coming home from college and he was like, oh my God, these people sit around and they talk about movies, the old movies and the classics. And he's like, I have no understanding of any of it. It's like they'd missed out on this whole tight part of living. But then he later made some reference to something and it was like, it's okay because meanwhile, they did a lot and they saw a lot, but it was just something very different. And I think they both grew to appreciate that and value it. But it was different.
Absolutely. And yeah, funny what you said about your daughter's reflection, which I think just cuts through everything. Yes, nothing like washing dishes after a peak running performance to put it all in perspective. Then I think you were a practicing lawyer for a long time and you've seen your career evolve. And I think at this point, you became the first female race director president, of the Western States. What is the significance of that? And why is running this iconic organization behind I think the oldest ultra race in this country? What is so meaningful about what you do?
I became president of Western States in 2019. I'm in my 5th year. And I think it was very symbolic and important to have a woman appointed president because ultra running has been so male dominated in general. So, so that I think in some ways that did play an important symbolic, was important in that way. For me personally, it's been a huge honor actually to be head of Western States. It's a really well-run organization. And both at the board level, I stepped into something where there's a lot of experience, a lot of expertise, a lot of, because I think unlike other nonprofits, this is Western State. So it's that running thing where people have a really special connection to it. So people care deeply, and that is reflected also in the board. And I think it helps keep the board and the organization committed to the event. But it also has evolved, I would say, over the last 5 years. We've had 5 new board members join who also bring new perspective, new talents to the board. And we have an incredible race director in Craig Thornley for the last 10 years, who really knows how to keep his eye on the ball on what's important and what we need to do to stay relevant and to keep moving forward. At the same time, honoring our history and our traditions and everything else, but you can't just stay grounded in that. You also have to be aware it's a very dynamic and changing world and environment. Running, if you want to stay on top, we're so small. The event is 369 runners, but really we have as much influence as, these huge races like Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, UTMB, that has tens of thousands of runners. But they actually look to us for guidance and advice because we really do play that important a role in the United States. But I would say that is in large part because of our history, and just being able to continue to maintain that um, that role by being aware of what's going on and adding a live stream, working on things around our diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that we stay on top of those issues. We were one of the first organizations to adopt a pregnancy policy. We just adopted a land
Wow.
acknowledgement and are making connections with local indigenous communities, both the Washoe which are Olympic Valley, and now the Nisenan, which are the Auburn area. We just adopted a new anti-doping policy. So it's things go on year round. The event happens at the end of June, but it's really year round now the things that we are working on.
Quite a few historic changes. You spoke about gender inclusion, you spoke about live streaming, you spoke about anti-doping. This is also a race that's steeped in history. What are some of the challenges in moving this race forward into this new world? And between these things you spoke about, what are those things that you are most proud of that you have helped accomplish?
I guess some of the biggest challenges with moving things forward, the biggest challenge I would say, and the most important thing as an organization is to stay in front of issues so that you're not reacting to things, but instead you're kind of moving forward with eyes open on what might be coming up and what you should be aware of and where you should be leading. So I think for Western states, the important thing is always to be the one that's the forward thinking organization. And the challenge with that is not getting too caught up in your history and like, oh, but we've always done it this way. We're not, we shouldn't change this. We shouldn't change that. So it's sort of that tension between honoring the past, but also recognizing that in order to stay in a leading position, you also have to be reacting to things, but more importantly, anticipating things and being a leader. That's what makes you a leader, is that you anticipate needs out there and that you're on the forefront of issues. So, like I said, with the pregnancy policy, we were one of the first ones to adopt it. We adopted a transgender policy, and that was in response to, actually, we knew we had a transgender entrant that was in our race. We may not have just adopted it in a vacuum, but as soon as that happened, instead of waiting for the outcome of the race, because it was someone who may have been in the top 10. So instead of waiting until that happened and then having to react at the moment, we proactively decided that we should adopt a policy. And we did a lot of research, and because there weren't really any good models out there that fit, a standalone organization like that, like ours. And that is one of the things I am very proud of, is that we did that work, adopted a policy, and we continue to look at it and have revised some of the language around the policy, but the policy itself has remained basically unchanged. Again, the land acknowledgement work, that's something that, it took a long time for us as an organization to figure out how to connect with the local indigenous groups. But we have accomplished that. We just adopted a land acknowledgement ourselves that is on our website now. We will have a land blessing at the start line, given by the Washoe, which is the local indigenous community there. And then, like I mentioned, with the Nisenan, who are the local indigenous group, at our finish line. And that takes a lot of work behind the scenes, because you want to really connect with those groups and understand them, and learn about them. So that's been work that we've done both at a committee level and at the board level. And I guess most recently is the anti-doping. And again, it's just being on top of that. We were one of the first races to adopt an anti-doping policy back in 2017. There weren't really good models again for that to do that. So there was a lot of work in adopting that policy. We had it in place until now. We have adopted a new one, and we're going to be partnering now with USADA, the U.S. anti-doping agency, and they will be handling if there are any positive results or any outcomes. They're the ones who handle the testing, and then they would handle the results management portion of it. But again, we're proud of having been a leader in starting with anti-doping in ultra running early on, and it is starting to gain more traction.
We live in this fast, dynamic world that seems to get even more dynamic by the day. And you are shepherding this treasured organization that is let's say, at the forefront of history with ultra running. And I can only imagine, like you said, the behind the scenes work that it takes to keep it all running, where you have to maintain the principles and the standards of the race, but also make sure that it continues to meet the needs. Moving on a little bit, your lives together, Tim and Diana, your accomplishments, how you have managed to balance so many things together and still have these goals as you move forward in your life. You inspire many people. I'm curious, what or who inspires you guys?
Well, I mean, I hate to keep going back to it, but come to San Quentin with us tonight at 5. Those guys are grinding, and the human condition is full of imperfections, and mistakes are made. And we have all made mistakes. Everybody listening to this podcast. The mistakes of those guys that were coaching had consequences. And for some of them, they're on their 27th year running around that yard. It's that really gives me a lot of, it's very inspirational to see those guys continue to work on themselves, continue to be optimistic, continue to grind. And so, the other guy that had a big influence on us, his name is Mike Finelli. We've mentioned him a few times. He passed away last November. And Mike was just really, really important for our running career. And that whole philosophy of that process, it comes from Mike. And so I would put Mike at the top of the list of people that have had big time influences on both of us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mike had an incredible influence, and I'm, grateful for so many people. Mike at the top of the list, but so many others who supported me in everything that I've been able to do. And I know I wouldn't be here. And, Tim among them, just always, we've been lucky to have each other. And we both have big families who are always there for us and support us too. And then, I don't know, I would say my friends, my running community, all of those people are the ones that inspire me and keep me going.
I will have to take you up on that San Quentin visit offer if it is indeed available to outsiders. If not today, maybe we can make it happen another evening. Coming to some final fun questions before we wrap it up. You guys have been very kind with your time. One thing I do want to ask is, I know that there are no secrets, but you have again been so consistent, your performance and your results. Any tips you can share with people when it comes to things like diet, things like body work, things like maintaining mobility as we continue to get older? What are some things that we can learn from your journey?
We've really mostly been runners our whole lives and didn't do a lot of um, uh, other things during our running season. I mean, we did, like Tim mentioned, tend to take the winter and have downtime and focus more on skiing. I love Nordic skiing, so skate skiing has been a big part of my training forever in the winter, those 6 months, and then running the rest of the year. Recently, and I mean, I say recently, like the last 10 years, we've added yoga, I would say, as really a regular part of our training. I think that's been really important, and I think it will continue to be important both for just some core strength and then balance and that type of stuff, which I think actually is really important and is a good counter for the running. Um, in terms of diet, that's another thing that we're not, I would say we don't really do anything special, everything in moderation. So we don't change our diet around racing or, um, of course, race day, we plan food for events or things like that. But otherwise, I would say we just eat sort of a normal balanced diet. Any
Yeah.
Any other thoughts there? Um, yeah, and I mean, I think it's great when people do other things like swim or bike or, yoga or strength training, and strength training is something that I'd like to start adding more of, like, along the lines of the yoga. I think it would be good to add some strength.
What's a balanced diet? And do you take any supplements?
No, I don't do any supplements. Just a combination of protein, carbs, fruits, vegetables. I probably have 1 cup of coffee too many per day. It The diet thing is not perfect for me. Um,
We eat meat, we eat chicken, so we don't have any special diet restrictions, but we also eat a lot of salads, sweet potatoes, um, chili in the winter, burritos, sushi we love. So it's just your general mix of food. And so we don't really follow anything in particular. A lot of people do, and a lot of people have gotten more into particular types of diets and foods and restricting foods and everything else. But I would say we just are
yeah.
more middle of the road.
We're good at fueling though. Like if we know Sunday morning we're gonna run 26 miles or whatever long, you know, I'll start fueling Friday a little bit, and then Saturday, I make sure I have a good dinner Saturday night, and then a little bit of a breakfast Sunday morning. So, we're big on using the long runs as experimenting with what works on your stomach. Because as you start running these races that are longer than 50K, you need to figure out what your stomach can tolerate. You're not gonna do it on just fluids. You've gotta eat. Um, as we've grown older, our stomachs have gotten a little bit more sensitive, and it's pretty common. You start getting sick, after 50 miles or whatever. It's a terrible feeling. So experimenting with what works on the food side during your long runs is super important.
What is it that you have learned from this experimentation? Are there certain kind of food that you would double down on or avoid as part of either race day, race day fueling up, or actually eating on race day? And also with like hydration, are there some things you have again fine tuned over time?
We like I like Gubru, and we have a couple of coaches that work with us at San Quentin that work for GU. So we have access to product that we really like. Um, in the early days of my ultra running, I could eat like a hamburger in the middle of a race and just get up and go off and run, the cow loop down to the river and feel great. But that changed as I started getting towards, I ran the race when I was 50 years old and my stomach got really sensitive. So more cantaloupe, more fruit. I did do some goos itself, some gels, energy gels, but I couldn't eat like I used to be able to eat like a turkey sandwich, at Michigan Bluff. And an hour later, I'd feel like King Kong because it would be in my system. And now I eat the turkey sandwich, and a half an hour later, I get rid of it. So it's just figuring out like less, I think a little blander foods, but try to get some protein, try to get some carbs, and try to get a little bit of sugar to keep your blood sugar normal. We're not super scientific. Like we're good friends with Stephanie Howe, who's a nutritionist and has her PhD in it. And like our approach is pretty simple. Like use your long runs to figure out what works and then do that race day to the best of your ability.
And then also the rigors and demands of high volume running over the decades, it exacts a toll on human bodies. Any debilitating injuries that you have to work through, any things you do to make sure that, again, your joints, etc., stay healthy with all the pounding that you subject them to. Knock on wood, indeed.
I think probably one of the most important things is to make sure you listen to your body. And if you're feeling something, give yourself a break, take the time off that you need to recover, not test something or pretend it's not really hurting. I have a little bit of a nagging Achilles thing since the last Western states, but I've just learned how to manage it. I know when too much is too much, or if I still want to run a long run, that I might feel it the next day, but then I may need to take a couple of easy days. But it's definitely something that I can manage. And I think especially, I don't, I'm hoping I never have to do surgery on it. I don't think I would because I can work around it. And especially given at my age, I think I'll be able to manage it. But it means listening to my body and making sure I don't overdo it. But also feel like I've been incredibly lucky with all of that in terms of injuries, because I really have not had many that have taken me out for any significant period of time.
And then also just honoring the concept of periodization. So you should have periods when you're not a runner. As you get into your 60s, and I've been a full-time ski patroller for a long time up at Sugar Bowl. And a lot of times for the winter, I just won't run a step. And it definitely has hurt my performances year round, but it's worth it. But I still like the process is still good. But like doing that type of activity, it's like doing CrossFit. Like during storm cycles, you're really, really on physically. It's exhausting. But you get strong. You get strong in a different way. You kind of get thick. You're really, really strong. You're moving stuff. You're lifting stuff. You're digging. So a variety of activity, and it's like, it's not like, you take a month off and bike. The way we do it, we take 4 or 5 months off from running and it's fine. We stay active, but we're doing different things. And I think longer term, it's helped us quite a bit.
It is certainly surprising. I find that in myself, where I will take a few months off climbing. I took recently 8 months off because of injuries and whatnot, but I was able to return to some kind of form quite quickly. And I think you guys are testament to this, where you already have so much base fitness over again these decades. As long as you keep supplanting your break time with ski patrolling, which is, certainly an intense daily activity, and other kinds of cross training, yoga and whatnot, I think you are able to get back to running fitness really quickly. So I think this is a message that I'm hearing from most people about being able to do other kinds of training and relying on all the hard work that's gone in over decades.
Yeah, I think it's so important and I think especially as you get older, that time off and away is really so critical. And there's often this fear about like, oh my gosh, if I don't keep it up, I'm going to lose it and never be able to regain it. I mean, last winter, we were up at our cabin from December until mid-April, and like Tim has said a couple times, that year we did not run a step. I came back down, had not run a step, had done some skiing, but there were days that I was stuck in the cabin because it was that unbelievable snow year, so just shoveling. And, we came back down and the ran the Dipsy, which was in the first weekend in June or the second Sunday in June. So not that much, 2 months later, and I didn't know what to expect, because it had been a while since I'd taken 100% the winter off from running. And, I mean, I got 4th at the Dipsy that year. Now that is that age group handicapped race, so it is, geared towards, uh, age group performances, but honestly, that surprised me. But it was a really good example of that time away. That was better than I had placed, I think, in a few years. But it was that time 100% off for 5 months and then coming back and being able to do that.
Yeah.
But there is a lot that is just in you, especially as you get older. You don't really need a whole lot to get back to where you can be at what is now your new peak level as a 60-year-old.
The other thing we like to do is we think Strava is a really good tool, and not because we're getting kudos or other people can see our workouts or that we're really looking at other people's workouts. But when you're coming back, like last week, a couple of runs, I literally felt so terrible. But I looked back last year, it was the exact same thing. And I was doing like the same pace, the same, like, if you have a accurate record of the ebbs and flows of training, like May 1st, you might not feel great running because you just took a couple months off, but then slowly your hips get used to it and you don't hurt yourself and your quads. And then we just did 2 trail runs this week, which was good to be back on single track with a little downhill. But keeping a record year in and year out is like, it's really a good thing to have, because then like you tend to remember your best workout or your best race for a cycle. But a lot of times you're starting and you feel like dog meat and it takes 10 weeks to get there. So just a little thing.
Strava and tools similar have really helped a lot of us take advantage of this automated record keeping, where we would not have
Yeah.
done that ourselves. But now, even me as a non runner, or let's say a very occasional uh, endurance person, can go back and look at my cycling times or my running times over the same Hawk Hill loop, 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
wow, look at that. I'm actually a tiny bit faster. And I'm able
Yeah.
to use that to some advantage.
It's not for everyone. I mean, we have one friend that's gone to 5 Olympic trials uh, for Lisbeth Sunshine. She does not wear a watch. She does not quantify anything. If you asked her how many miles she ran this week, she would be like somewhere between 10 and 80.
Whoa.
Like she's just not, but she's super talented and she's an awesome age group runner as well. But it's not for everyone. That's like coaching. Some people are better off just to do it, wake up and see what you want to run that day. I like to look back. I like to know, and I like to have a plan going forward.
That's a very interesting topic in itself. Thanks for sharing. The quantified versus the natural, spontaneous
Right.
athlete. If I'm lucky enough to get you back on the show sometime, would love to dive into that a little bit deeper. But Tim and Diana, it's been a delight having you on the show today. I'm sure you have many things to get to, given that it is Monday indeed. So thanks again for coming on, and this conversation will surely delight and inspire listeners.
Great. Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Real
It
honor
was-
to be here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure and an honor to talk to you.
Wonderful. The Fitzpatricks have shown us that running is more than just a sport. Wow, what a great conversation. It is a way to connect with others, build community, and create lasting change. Whether it's helping inmates at San Quentin set and achieve their goals or directing races that bring the community together, Diana and Tim's story reminds us of the deeper significance of the sport we love. As we wrap up, here are a few key takeaways from the episode. Community. At San Quentin, the running club is more than just exercise, it's a lifeline. The sense of belonging and support within the group has helped inmates transform their lives. Setting realistic goals. Diana and Tim emphasize the importance of setting achievable goals, which provide structure and motivation for personal growth, whether in running or in life. And then finally, balance. This story is a powerful reminder that it is possible to pursue your passions even in the face of life's challenges, from high-profile corporate jobs to running to smart kids, by staying connected to your community and embracing the process. We encourage you to reflect on these lessons, whether in your running practice or any other passion you pursue. And remember, no matter where you are in your athletic journey, it is the commitment to your sport, to your life, to what is important to you that keeps you young at heart. So until next time, keep that fire burning, find balance, go hug your friend, and even better, go for a run with your friend. See you next time, next week, right here, my friends. Until then, stay ageless.